I am Jane Johnson, and I run an organisation called Careering into Motherhood. I'm not going to sit here now and do a full backstory. I suspect the morning coffee is starting to wear off, so we're going to keep this session quite interactive. I think the thing to start out by saying is I do not have all the answers. So some of those questions around, maternal guilt, how do I balance things? Those are the things that our community members and I myself personally come up, go through, have been through. It's a constant riding that wave. And I don't think anyone could pertain to say, I have all the answers. If there was a guidebook, I'd have written it years ago and made millions. And I think that is the key takeaway from this talk, that every family, every structure is unique, your own career paths, etc. So what we're going to talk about today is some sort of guiding principles, I guess, and share some experiences. So I'm just going to try and share some slides. Oh, hang on, actually, I just need to do it so I can also see you. Hang on 1 second, try again.
Yep, we can see those for you now, Jane. Yeah, perfect.
So we're going to talk, as I say, about, this is more of a discussion for some around how we can keep our careers on track after becoming parents. And this is a conversation for employers and employees. So I'm really heartened to hear that some of you are here just to understand more about how you can support the parents in your teams. We're going to start off with a trivia quiz. I feel like I should have some fun music for this. But these are the rules of the game. So 3 questions. You have limited time to answer. Each question is equivalent to 1 point. And we're not going to take in the number of points, but see if you can get the most answers right. So question 1, hope you're all ready. Question 1, how many mothers say that they feel their chances of promotion have been negatively impacted by having children? A quarter, a third, or half? Now, I should add that the responses to the answers to these questions are all based on a survey of over 2,000 women that we did within Careering into Motherhood at the end of 2022. So very statistically viable and very recent. So what would be your gut feeling? This is how many mothers say they feel their chances of promotion have been negatively impacted just by having children. And then we'll move on to the next one. When it comes to career ambition, how many women say they are more ambitious than they were before they had a family, or as ambitious, just as ambitious as they were before? Do you think it's 15%, 35%, or 70% more ambitious? And the final question, what are the top 3 things that the ideal employer would offer working mums? And this is quite specifically working mums that we have asked, women with careers and roles as well as children. Was it an on-site nursery? So the top 3 things. Was it on-site nurseries, promotions, just going to those who can be in the office most, more social events after work, more empathetic managers, the fact you can book all your annual leave at the start of the year, mandating that you must take a lunch hour, and return to work coaching? So I don't know if you've put it in the chat box or if you've just noted down your thoughts, but we will now have a look at the answers. And as I say, these have all come from a study of over 2,000 working mothers that we performed last year. So half of mothers feel that their chances of promotion have been negatively impacted by having children. Now, whether or not that is actually the case, when you dig down into the data within your organization, and a lot of organizations are putting a lot of resource behind supporting more gender equality in the workplace, things like fast tracking women's careers, returnships, all of these great initiatives. But this is how our community members, working mums, feel. So this is how an organisation, and usually within a team, so a team leader, is making that woman feel about her career once she has children. I think that's quite shocking. The second one,
Jane, just so you know, everyone, pretty much all of the responses in chat were half. So I think the audience, yes, they are absolutely aligned with your research, which is fantastic to hear.
Yeah,
well, it's not, but it validates your response.
Exactly. So, you know, we are representative, and we on this call today are representative. And I think that we'll come on and get your input on this, but I think that is real. That's a real head scratcher for organizations to be thinking about, because if that is how employers are making us feel, then we're never going to solve the challenges that they have in terms of helping women with their careers. And yet almost 70% of all working mothers yet say that we are as ambitious as we were before, or even more ambitious. A lot of women feel more ambitious once they have children, because we now want to, you know, we have ambition for our kids, and that costs money, and therefore, you know, improving salaries and things like that. So I thought when we got the data back from this survey, this one was, for me, the absolute standout, that organizations are making us feel like we can't get where we want to be, and yet we really want that. We really want to continue with our careers. And then the final question was around we asked what would be in and what would be out of, you know, your ideal workplace. So not surprisingly, better support with childcare, on-site nurseries, things like that, and return to work coaching. Now, this is some of the things that my organisation, we support employers in providing, but we didn't massage the figures or anything. This was one of the things that women were asking for, alongside more empathetic managers. And again, we see a big mismatch between what an organisation will have in place in terms of policies, and then how those are interpreted by managers when they are running, you know, with vast amounts of things on their to-do list, and perhaps saying things without thinking, and so on. So it's really having an impact on retention and engagement.
Jane, just to give you the feedback on chat. So slightly different in terms of ambition. So we've had a range of responses, but quite a few 35%. So it's slightly different to your research in terms of ambition. But absolutely everything, pretty much so many of the comments are around empathetic managers. So it's managers just understanding the challenge of balancing a career and a family. And then the return to work coaching, which I think is, you know, it should be mandatory almost, you know, as a help, because you come back quite a different person to the person that leaves often. So yes, total alignment with your point 3 on sort of on-site nurseries, childcare support, return to work coaching, and particularly more empathetic managers.
Interesting. Really interesting. Yeah, and you know, as I say, we're clearly, the women on this call are, you know, we are representative of the wider community that we have within Careering into Motherhood, and, you know, just as women with children. And as you say, Claire, you know, I agree as well. I think return to work coaching should be something, it really helps an organisation. I've got a stat here. So on average, it takes 100 hours for an organisation to replace an employee once they've when they leave. And that's everything from, you know, briefing recruiters, sitting in interviews, the hiring policies, getting people onboarded, and then getting people up to speed. So 100 hours is what you lose if that mother walks out the door, is not retained after having a family. The maximum compensation award for unfair dismissal in the UK is over £105,000, almost £106,000. So again, the price of getting this wrong as a team leader, as a manager, just by saying the wrong thing or doing the wrong thing is really high. And yet the fee for coaching for one-to-one for an employee is around £3,000. For online coaching, which is something we offer, it's much less than that, significantly less for per employee. But let's, and I also want to say, only 21% of employers offer any kind of coaching support for returners. And to your point, Claire, we're almost kind of expected. There's the initial bring your child into work and let's all coo over the baby. But then after those first few weeks, you're expected just to slip back into the shoes that you were filling before you left. And you've been through this huge life change. So I'd love to see that number increasing. And we know from our own organisation as well that very few organisations provide line manager support on things like leading with empathy for supporting working parents. And yet it can make or break your experience when returning. So now that we have broken the ice, just a final thing to say, that the other thing is organisations are often very focused around supporting that period of parental leave, whether it's going or returning. But as we'll all know, some of the comments from the very start about you've got older children, parental leave, maternity leave is just the start on now a future journey of almost constant transition. And all of these things affect the way parents will show up at work, affect the way we can show up at work. It's not a lack of desire or will, but there's so much going on. So again, I think organisations do well to remember that maternity leave or parental leave is just the start in a long, long series of transitions now. Yes, so now that we have broken the ice a little bit, I'd love to know who here is here out of interest, or who is here because you have children. I think we covered some of that off at the start. I tend to talk to people who are either working parents themselves, either about to go on parental leave or return, either managing teams of parents, or just here as allies and wanting to support. So if you are able to pop in the chat where you are in that sort of journey. I'm Jane Johnson. As I said at the start, I founded Careering into Motherhood. We started as a Facebook group initially. I had my son, I returned to employment and actually managed to negotiate a job share role as a global director at HSBC. It was brilliant. It worked for me, it worked for the organisation. We were the first pair to negotiate a job share at that level. But then I'd been at the bank for 5 years, everything was going well, and I started to think, right, where did I want to take my career next? And I called around the recruiters who'd helped me over the past, it'd been about 20 years I'd had my career. And this was before lockdown, but any kind of mention of any kind of flexible working was just greeted with kind of the tumbleweed. And I started to look around and think, my goodness, actually, yeah, all my colleagues seemed to be leaving organisations, either going freelance or finding roles closer to home, which obviously were lower paid. And I just got angry, actually. I got so frustrated because I knew, again, working for a large global organisation where I had teams in the Middle East, we had people on different time zones over around the other side of the world. And so I knew that organisations were able to accommodate different working patterns, and yet as soon as you talked about that within the UK, it seemed to be, no, you have to be in the office 5 days of working, the UK hours. So Careering into Motherhood was born really, as I say, out of frustration. We are the largest online community focused on career support for working mothers. We still have our Facebook community. I think we have about 12,000 members in that group. So if you'd like to come along and find out more about that, if you're on Facebook, just search for Careering into Motherhood. Every single day. I mean, we have about 2,000 active members per day. So, and that's not me doing anything. That just reflects the, I guess, frustration, challenges, interest in cracking this very, very hard nut. We also partner with employers. As I say, we offer online coaching. We do offer training for managers. E-learning is our big unique selling point because we grew up as an online community. We know the online learning space really well. And I feel very passionately that all women should have access to coaching support, but it gets very costly for organizations to put one person in front of one coach. But through our online learning programs or e-coaching programs, those can be made available to everybody within an organization. So that's Careering into Motherhood.
So you've had a huge amount of comments, Jane, on the chat. An awful lot of people. So I think the majority of your audience today are wanting to help other parents, but are working mothers. So most have more than one child. Some are working in HR. So I think you are absolutely spot on for target market of people on the call with children, wanting to help others, wanting to also learn for themselves, and a few are HR as well. So I think target market for everything that you're going to be saying, Jane.
Fantastic, thank you, and thank you all for chipping in and getting involved with the presentation. It's much nicer to get feedback and interaction. I'd love to know whether your organizations or whether you yourself, whether it's come through your organization or you yourself have had any kind of support in returning to work, or if you've just sort of figured it out by yourselves, or you're trying to figure it out by yourselves.
That's a good question. I'll keep an eye on chat.
Yeah,
keep an eye on chat.
Thank you.
What is fascinating, actually, Jane, is I'm doing some coaching for women in wholesale, and one of my coachees is on maternity leave at the moment, and all of our prep is to help her return. So it's just amazing timing for her, and very lucky that women in wholesale are offering that support at the moment. But what I've noticed with her is she's got almost a dual. She's got the whole sort of mental, sort of confidence. What am I going to be like? What's the organization going to be like? What's changed since I've been there? Am I going to be as good as I was before? So all that, but then she's got the practical, how am I going to do the drop-offs? How do I flex my time now? And I can't be in that office and I can't do that. And so there's a sort of a double whammy that she's working through in her mind. There's the sort of whole internal, confidence and imposter piece. And then there's the whole practical changes in terms of how do I actually logistically manage my life piece. So yeah, multiple challenges.
Yeah, definitely. We'll come on actually. In a couple of slides on, I've got some, as I say, never pretend to give everybody or anybody the answers, but I've got some kind of hints and tips or sort of things that seem to work well from our experience with careering into motherhood. So we can talk about some of those things there. And again, it'd be great to get all of your input then. I can just see a couple of the comments. It's interesting. Yes. Someone talking about kit days and understanding managers. I think that's so important. Often kit days, people don't really know what to do with them, or managers sort of they bring you in, and I remember one of mine, he said, "Oh, come in for the team meeting." And I'd been off for 6 months, and you just think, I have no idea what's going on. Me sitting in a team meeting for an hour, I'm not going to add value with that. And I think, being very mindful or very conscious and constructive about how you use those kit days as a manager, how you want to help support, reintegrate your team member as she comes back or he comes back. How does it support be? Yeah, I was able to do kit days, not enough support. Yeah, interesting. So I'll press on with the next slides, and then we'll have a chance for more comments and observations and questions. Try and do this again. Yeah, right. So one of the questions, which seems like I'm probably preaching to the choir here already, but it does come up, and again, if you're putting together anything, sort of a business case, that sort of thing, on why support working mothers. And one of the questions that I often get asked is, why are you only about working mothers? Surely it's all parents. And I should say that within our corporate support, so I touched upon the coaching and line manager training. Of course, we are supporting all parents and carers in those programs, but as we can see just from the attendees here today, by far and away, it is working mothers who are still bearing the brunt of the domestic load, trying to have a career, still expected to show up exactly the same as they were before having children. And we contribute to our families, but also the success of our workplaces. I always say we bring resilience, we bring problem solving, dedication. We all know the challenges that we go through just to still show up at work. So that commitment, those hurdles and obstacles, challenges that we just navigate in order to come in and do our day job, does represent a real loyalty and a real passion to support our employers. And often that kind of gets overlooked, or we brush it under the carpets ourselves and just think it's part and parcel of being a working mother. The challenges can be overwhelming. Childcare costs too often are seen as sort of coming out of the woman's salary, or in hetero couples coming out of the mother's salary, and not seen as part and parcel of the holistic cost of having children. I mean, one of the things that often comes up in our Facebook community, where women say, "Oh, I've gone back to work, but I can't afford the childcare because by the time I take that out of my salary, it's almost, I'm working for next to nothing." And I always encourage, number one, if you're thinking of having children, in the same way as if you're thinking of buying a house, budget for that, save for it, look at the costs together as a couple if you're having children in a couple. Parental leave, obviously one of you is going to take that, and that is going to cost. There's an impact to your salaries. As I say, the childcare costs, often inflexible working hours, and the lack of support. Increasingly we don't live around the corner from our families, from childcare support and things like that. So thinking and planning about how you are going to manage your childcare as you return to work. I have to hold my hand up here and say it was one of this. I mean, I kicked myself because I just never thought. I mentioned I was working at HSBC over in Canary Wharf, Southeast London. I live in Southwest London. It didn't occur to me that I wouldn't be able to do the long working hours and want to add an hour and a half commute at the end of each day and at the start of each day. It just didn't occur to me. And it seems crazy now, but all of those sort of planning things that you can do with your partner, if you have one, when you're having children.
Call in 2 secs.
And I think to truly support working mothers, we really need creative solutions that work for the organisation and for the employees. And we'll come on to look, excuse me, at some of those in a moment. Let's take some water. The other thing is, supporting working mothers is about supporting individual lives in a modern, evolved society like ours. There are benefits for the whole of society in supporting working mothers. So children where both parents are supported tend to thrive better academically, socially, and emotionally. So there are really good societal reasons for supporting working mothers as well. And one of the things that a lot of people don't think about is the fact that in the UK, we send more young women to university than young men. So we are investing in them academically. And then when we come out the other end with our nice shiny qualification, we go into the workplace and we're effectively saying to them, well, you can stay here for 5 to 10 years, but after that, you're going to have to go and do something probably different from your qualification, probably lower paid from where you were, from the trajectory that you were on. And that doesn't seem to worry us as a society. So there are fundamental kind of societal and economic issues, as well as, of course, just the things for our well-being and mental health. Sorry, I got a bit doing a lot of talking.
I can jump in and give you a chance to have a bit of a turn your mic off and have a cough, Jane.
Thank you.
Because we've had some fantastic feedback from Heidi, if I can mention your name, who says she feels very fortunate to work for a company that has a fantastic flexible working policy, and she has an understanding line manager who allows her not to miss important child events. So she did have to shape her 10 keep in touch days and explained what she wanted to get out of them. But she did a phased return to work as well, which helped. So she said it's great to pair up with like-minded women to help share stories and advice. And that feels like a fantastic bit of advice and a story to share.
Definitely. Thank you, Heidi. Yes, I think this is the thing. It shouldn't be that hard, and it isn't really that hard when you have somebody like you've done, Heidi, where you've gone and sought out the support, the community, the advice, and you've got a supportive line manager. It really is possible, I believe, that both ambition and motherhood can coexist, but it does take effort and it does take input from both parties, if you like. So I love this cartoon. A lot of organizations will say, well, we invest loads, we've got gender parity, certainly at entry level, we have as many young women as young men joining the organization in our graduate training programs and things like that. But they can't understand, they scratch their heads why we still don't have as many senior women at the top of organizations. And I think this is pretty much it. I mean, if you just substitute the crocodiles and the barbed wire for, being the point of contact for the nursery, for the school, having to think about all the, party planning and birthday presents, the school child, the holiday childcare, all of the things, the domestic load, all of the things that will be on many of our to-do lists. This, to me, pretty much sums things up. So it's just really a bit of a tongue-in-cheek thing there. Most of us would be aghast to think that these kinds of conversations were happening within our organisations, but the fact is that they are happening all too often. And this is where I say it comes back to that line manager and the kinds of conversations they're having. Now, a lot of these are said off the cuff, and we have, from our research, we asked for some, what are some of the things you've been told? So these are not things from 10, 15 years ago. This is something from our research 2 years ago. But we understand, for line managers, the to-do list is really long. Unconscious bias creeps in, thinking off the cuff, saying things, not actually, as I say, sort of mindfully leading and being empathetic. I think a lot of the time it's underestimating the challenges that we actually go through in order to be back in the workplace. We do it because we want to be there. So anything that kind of challenges our engagement, our productivity, or our loyalty feels like a real kick in the teeth. So one of the things is really empathy training or leading with empathy training for line managers. And if you can have conversations, we've got a lot of people from HR here, if you can have conversations with your team leaders about this as their teams are returning, just to get them to be a bit more mindful about the kind of things that they're going to be saying, the kind of requests that they're going to be getting as well. As I say, I really believe most managers want to do the right thing. But when the to-do list is long and when they're managing on autopilot, that can be quite tricky.
Again, I'll give you a cough, time for another quick cough, Jane, and a sip of water. We've had a less positive response from another one of our guests who says that she had put in a request for part-time at school, but full-time when school is on, part-time during the holidays. And it is part of their company policy, but it got rejected. Her role isn't customer facing, and she's been with the company for nearly 12 years. But the words of her HR were, the company doesn't revolve around school.
Yes, which, you know, if I'm going to put my kind of my hard hat on, you know, that's factually correct, isn't it? But that is not what you were asking. And I think, you know, this is part of the thing. We do have to work really hard with organizations to be creative. And not knowing your organization, but I don't know if you feel that door is now closed and that's that. But I think some of the things is going back before going to make a request like that. Often it works to sit down with a manager, explain your situation, but come with some solutions, come with some creative ideas. We often advise, suggest a 6-month trial, because that can feel less risky for an organization. It doesn't feel like it's forever. One of the big concerns, which I'm sure you've probably all heard as well, is, oh, but if we do it for you, it will open the floodgates. Everyone will want the same. Facts and data prove that that is simply not the case. As we can, you know, we now have lockdown, the pandemic, to show us that it wasn't the case that all of a sudden everybody wanted to stay working from home 5 days a week. In fact, very few people do. A lot of people, for them, the hybrid working works. For a lot of people, going into an office 5 days a week still works. So there is data that proves that it will not open the floodgates, but you have to do your research. One of the other tips might be to find somebody else within your organization who perhaps works in this way, talk to them about how they got that through. If there is nobody else within an organization, perhaps put a call out on LinkedIn, put a call out into if you join our Facebook group, you can even post anonymously and find and have a conversation with someone who has managed to get it through, and see how they did it. You know, is there somebody that could step up and take some of your responsibilities on that during that time? Will there be reduction in salary if you're working less? Just finding the little hooks that might get them on board, and feeling like it's less risky.
So Jane, to your point on that, have you on your website, or is there any, did you hold the information? So, you know, when you say do your research, well, clearly doing anything over and above day job and survival and kids is sometimes a challenge. So is there an easy place for people to find those best practice examples to use as their research and their demonstrations of this can work, and, you know, creative ideas, and these are options that are viable?
So we don't sort of keep a track of every post. I mean, as I say, if you join the Facebook community, you'll see it is so active, and we don't have the resource to kind of track all of that. But it is a free kind of resource where you've got 12,000 women whose ideas you can canvas, you know, that hive mind. So going into groups like, I mean, like ours, there are lots of other flexible working groups, but I don't know if they're specific around mums. But come into our group by all means and ask and canvas that opinion, and put together your business case. We do have on our website, there is a resource, if you put it in, or if the person would like to contact me afterwards, one of our coaches did a kind of mini toolkit on how to put together a business case for flexible working. So we do have tools and coaching advice and support on the website. Okay. So I'd like to so I'm just going to move this thing. So I'd love to put this across to you. I can see you've obviously been really good, and thank you for interacting so far. But if you've been on parental leave, or your organisation has some great policies in place, what are some of the things that you've seen work? Do you have, perhaps we can just pool some ideas here in terms of what works for your organisation. Has anyone here, have you done anything quite groundbreaking, quite unusual? And then we'll come on to look at some of the practical things that we suggest organisations can implement.
Thanks, Jane. Can I just add that if people want to actually talk, we can unmute you, because it's nice to hear voices as well. But I'm also aware that some people do prefer just to write, and that's good too.
So we've had one response, Jane, I don't know if you can see in chat, shared parental leave, both men and women, which I think is fantastic, actually. I think the more that the responsibility can be shared, the more that that both parties feel empowered. I think it's great to have.
Definitely. I know, organisations that are pushing this through, it is a slow burn. And again, I think it's tied to things like the gender pay gap, because if you're in a hetero couple and you're looking at who's going to take 6 months or 12 months off, or who's going to take any amount of time off, at a certain point you will go down to the statutory maternity pay. And that's why inevitably it tends to be the woman who tends to take it. But just having those policies in place over time, organisations are seeing more men take the leave as well. So that's brilliant.
My husband took 6 months off.
Did he?
I was only able to take 3 because I worked for myself at the time, and obviously I didn't get maternity pay. But he took 6 months off, and it was fully paid, 100% paid by the civil service.
Fantastic.
And he now has an incredible bond with my son. So it's just brilliant if workplaces can offer it.
Yes, it really is. That's great, Elliot. Flexible working, yes, flexible working, more working from home during holidays. Yeah. Yes. No one will ever question why. Yeah, that's really good, isn't it? And I think I'd be interested to know, actually, have you seen that? Has that changed more since lockdown? I think that was one of the things that came out from our community, that actually there was suddenly more of this blurring of the lines between domestic life and work life, as we were all of a sudden on Zoom calls with our washing and our kids in the background, and not having to get suited and booted. So that seems to be one of the positives from the lockdown, that people didn't challenge when you needed some time to go and do things for your family.
Jane, Joe has a hand up. We have a question.
Oh,
yeah, or a comment. Yeah, comment more so. I think lockdown has changed so much for the better on this whole subject. There's still a long way to go. I'm with you. I had my kids all pre-lockdown. I spent hundreds of thousands of pounds from wraparound care. A third child became an economic decision. Just couldn't afford it. But you do need to remember it is only up to a certain age at that point. At 11, they're both in secondary now, thank God. So they take themselves to school, get themselves home. They eat a proper meal at school, so tea time for them is more of a lighter tea. So all of that stuff, kind of the pressure comes off. But pre-lockdown, people used to slink off to do the school run, didn't they? And if you left work, pre the end of the day or arrived after 9:30, there was a bit of a look and a snigger kind of thing. But now it's normalized, I think, that people can do that. And because there is the work at home, and your primary schools tend to be within a mile of your home by definition, then it is a 10-minute thing here and there, isn't it? Just to take your children there or back, and then, as I say, secondary for their own independence. It's good they get themselves there and back. In any case, so I think lockdown has really opened it up from a pre-lockdown sort of primary school mum to what I see people do now. They've got a much easier way, still not there fully, and there's still different attitudes and different businesses, but I think lockdown, lots of good came out of that. Vinted and this I think are both really good examples of seismic social change from a crisis, really. So I think we're getting there, and we should keep pushing that. The more of us who do that, the more it become normalised. But yeah, it's moving leaps and bounds since lockdown, I think.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's really good, and yeah, really good point to remind certainly those who are perhaps really in the thick of things at the moment with nursery age children, or really young children, or newborns, that this period, it is relatively short, and before you know it, they become similar. I've got a 10, almost 11-year-old. And yeah, he's so independent now. Even I was just saying, we had October half term. It was the first time I didn't have to think about putting him in clubs for whole days, because he's just able to entertain himself a bit more while I can get on with some work. But I think it is about having that conversation. There's a brilliant book by a woman called Professor Jennifer Petriglieri, and she's a professor at INSEAD University. It's called Couples Who Work, and she talks about having regular conversations, almost meetings with your partner, to talk about, okay, my career is going in this direction, one of us needs to look after the children, then I take my foot off the gas while you put the foot on the gas, and your career takes off, and having regular conversations about how you're going to manage that juggle, because it's not just your careers that are constantly changing. Obviously, the children and their needs are constantly changing as well. So brilliant. Right, so I will thank you for sharing some of the things that your organisations are doing. That's great, and love the idea that you could share these after the talk. So these are some of the guiding principles that we have for managers. Remember, everyone's family structure is unique. So what works for me will be totally different from what works for you. And a lot of the comments and things that came out in our report, or that come out now from our community, the frustrations arise when a manager will say, oh, you're returning, I'm assuming you don't want to travel, or I'm assuming you'll be needing X, Y, Z. Well, our recommendation for managers is inform yourself before that keep in touch day. Things like prepare for the meetings. Chances are a question around flexible working may come up. So find out what your company policy is, but also think about what you as a manager think you may or may not be able to accommodate. Prepare for that conversation, and don't assume. Consult. So these are the things. Don't make assumptions. Consult, listen, and use coaching style techniques. If you're lucky enough to have in-house coaching, go and talk to that in-house coach. Make use of the resources that you've got, or seek them out. And I'm sure that Claire will be able to talk more about, I'm not a coach, but I'm sure Claire will be able to talk much more about what coaching style conversations sound like. It's just the way you're questioning and listening. And then being more mindful in your communication. As we talked about earlier, your employees are making huge sacrifices to be there. So assuming that because they're not there at 4 o'clock on a Friday because they wanted to go and pick their child up or watch their child play sport, try not to immediately jump to preconceived ideas and make assumptions again. We want to be at work. And then this point about leading with empathy, and as I say, it is one of our kind of core offerings. If you don't have it within your organization, either please come and talk to me, to us, or seek it out, because it's so important. Manager training and leading with empathy. And then our guiding principles for parents. So ask for what you want. Again, don't just assume that anybody knows unless you ask. To the person who mentioned before about, you clearly did go and ask for what you want, and it's so disheartening when it's declined. And I know it can leave you feeling really frustrated and as though you don't want to stay with that organization a lot of the time. But do your research, use the resources that are available either internally or externally. You almost need to put together a business case, especially if you're wanting something different. Remember, your manager has a job to do. They're busy really bringing something which, I'm just using a label here, but that is going to be perceived as a headache for them, or a challenge, a problem without a solution, is going to mean they'll default usually to the no, sorry, that's not possible. Presenting solutions, and as I say, this really great idea of trialing, sorry, I thought that was a question.
Sorry, can we put ourselves on mute, please? Thank you.
Presenting solutions to problems and thinking creatively, and this idea about trialing.
I was woken up by I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, the musical. Props
we've got someone,
participants for having that level of.
There we go.
Thank you.
And then, so this is those points are more around what you can do in terms of within your organization, but also get selfish about your career. Start to think about what it is you want from your career. You're now going to have less time to manage that career. Working with a coach is obviously really helpful because you carve out that time. But obviously there's a fee attached to that. But be strategic. There's lots of free resources, again, on our website, or just do a Google search. Start to think about where you want to take your career, because chances are it's going to take you a bit longer, just because the amount of time you have available to your own career progression. But be strategic about your decisions. Use networking events wisely. Get yourself a personal board. Now, this is something, it is a coaching style concept. Claire's nodding. So in the same way, if you think about your organization, they are led by a board of advisors who will input into the direction of that company. Think about your career almost in the same way as you would a company. Who could help you get where you want to be? Elliot, your question at the start around, is it still possible to make it to boardroom? Absolutely, absolutely. But you need to be really strategic about the progress, the decisions, the meetings that you'll be having. Who do you admire? And it doesn't have to be somebody that you can always ask, can I have a coffee? Of course, you can put people in that sort of boardroom, virtual boardroom of people you do regularly meet up with, but it might be somebody you admire and follow on LinkedIn. You like their style of communication, you like what they're doing with their career, and just follow them. Social media makes it really easy. LinkedIn is a great place to find people who kind of influence you in that space. And understand what it is that each of those people give you, or what you get from them. There may be one or two people that you do use as kind of mentors that you do go and have meetings with. If you are asking for meetings, be very purposeful about what you want from that meeting. As I said, there's nothing worse than getting a request saying, hi, could you, I love what you do, could you help me? It's like, well, I don't have time to meet up for coffees and just shoot the breeze. But if someone emails me and says, I need help doing X, you have done X, can you share some ideas about how I can do that too? Absolutely. Who would say no to that? So design your little own personal board and review it regularly and help you get where you want to be. I'm just conscious of time, so we'll move on. these are some of the tools that we have on our website. So obviously we have the Facebook community, we've got an Instagram account. We have lots and lots of resources. Our coaches write news articles, they give away free coaching tools. So if you want to kind of manage some of these things by yourself, if you don't want to or can't invest in a coach, then head to our website and you can put in any kind of search function. You can search for coaches by all different filters, and they cover anything and everything from managing children with special educational needs to divorce, return to work coaching, obviously, changing career, launching a business, running a side hustle, addictive behaviors. We really do have what I think one of the most diverse cohorts of coaching resources out there. And of course, you can connect with them and work with them in a one-to-one capacity as well. I wasn't going to talk about that. That's largely really all I wanted to cover, but I would love your thoughts, observations, and any questions.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jane. While we're waiting for questions, as a coach and having coached quite a few females, but equally women who are coming back from maternity, there are three bits of advice that are consistent that I give that seem to be in this order really, really helpful. The first is just prioritize you time, because as a coach, how you become and stay resilient, you have to have a little bit of you time. So if you are constantly giving to everyone else, which you do as a working mother, you run out of your time and you never reinvest in yourself. So you just never build the resilience that you have to survive. So if you do nothing else, guaranteed to build yourself 5 or 10 minutes every day just to reflect and recharge, because if you don't look after yourself, everything becomes more difficult. So that's my number one top tip. Second would be to consciously then prioritize where you do put your time and effort and really be clear on how you use your time brilliantly well. And there's models that can help you do that. And then the third is, particularly with returning to work, just be really, really proactive. So as Jane said, just be really clear, write a great big list of things that you want to ask for, and then be proactive about thinking about how you can make it work. And the more proactive you are, the more creative you are, the far more likely you are for all of these things to happen from a return to work perspective. So those would be my 3 top tips. But the number one, if you do nothing else from Jane's chat, you just need to look after yourselves. Give yourselves that little time to recharge every day so you can carry on being amazing.
Thank you, Chloe. Definitely really, really valuable advice. And it is so hard to find that time for yourself, isn't it, when you're running at 1,000,000 miles an hour? But yeah, it's that old adage of you can't put the air mask on yourself and on others until you've looked after yourself. Great. Does anyone have any questions, observations, thoughts? Thank you all for attending. I hope it was useful.
So in chats, your Facebook link has been posted. And yeah, join the LinkedIn group and the Facebook group so people have that information, Jane, to follow. Throw any other questions. We've got about 3 minutes max, maybe 2 minutes if you've got a 10 o'clock. You've had feedback, Jane, I don't know if you can see, just saying thank you so much, it's been really, really helpful. Oh, Heidi, you've had your hand up. Heidi, do you want to shout out?
Yeah, just a quick one. Apologies, first of all, I was a little bit late joining this call, but I just wanted to say the session was really, really valuable. I'm actually a senior manager in Mars, the Incorporated, the American company, and I have got 2 children and I've worked through lots of these challenges. I'm always keen to speak to people. So if I do have some mentoring space at the moment as well. So if anybody wants to reach out to me on LinkedIn, then please feel free as well. Because I just think a problem shared is a problem halved. But I love these sessions. I get so much out of them. And I love connecting with like-minded people as well. So I've just found it very valuable. So thank you so much.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you, Heidi. And what a generous offer as well. I'm sure you'll that space won't be around for long. That's really great. And it's also a really important point, actually, to find, if you are feeling a bit at sea at the moment, Coaching is obviously very structured. It's a paid arrangement, and you'll work through somebody who's been trained in how to help you. But mentoring is much more informal and can be, well, is really helpful if you find the right mentor. So definitely take Heidi up on that. Brilliant. Great. Well, please do connect with me if you any questions that come to you afterwards. Drop me a line. I'm always very happy to connect with people. And yes, if you'd like to know any more about obviously our corporate partnership programs and things, please also get in touch. It's something that can have a huge impact on an organisation. Your retention, it can reduce your recruitment fees, and generally improve employee engagement.
Brilliant.
So thank you to Claire and Ellen for inviting me.
Wonderful. Jane, thank you so much. And we'll share all of Jane's information as well. So thank you all for your fantastic questions. Thank you for participating, and huge thanks to Jane for all of her words of advice, and great to see you all. Have a wonderful rest of day. Thank you.
Thank you.